we make all of our money on the hirer side. So we have a business strategy that is don't charge the candidate anything because we want for as least friction as possible to get the maximum candidate throughput, and we want to help people find jobs, and we want to match them to jobs as fast as possible.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 60/40 podcast, the only podcast that deep dives Asia's business and tech headlines from the leaders actually driving the change. Every 2 weeks, we are bringing you the biggest headlines and leaders from across Asia. I'm Maria, and I'm here again with my co-hosts Prashanth and Peter. Hey guys, how are y'all doing today?
Hey, Maria.
Maria's back.
You sounded
in
very
person.
shaky on that one.
Hey. Breeze.
I'm doing well, Maria. How are you?
Great. Thank you for that confident response. I'm great. I'm back from Greece. My kids are almost working off their jet lag.
Are you
Greece
working
is
off
awesome.
your baklava?
Yes, the baklava, the souvlaki, the Greek salads, all of the above.
Fantastic.
Any
Bravo.
headlines that are keeping y'all
I'm
excited and interested today?
for me, let's see, two or three things. One, I feel like I'm just like going down the court reporter rabbit hole trying to follow all the court drama that is Apple and Google in North America. It's fascinating. So I love that. I'm curious to see if any of those companies get broken up. And if so, how they get broken up. That's one. I'm curious what the Chinese government was thinking when they decided not to send somebody to the Shangri-La Accords. I thought that was very interesting. so
Yeah.
I would have loved to have been a fly behind the red curtain, so to speak. And then, last but not least, T minus 3 weeks for WWDC. I'm really curious if Apple does anything in the AI world, anything different. But we'll see.
Or just deliver on what they've promised already.
Yeah.
Just do
would be
that.
good.
That'd be good.
That would be good.
The Shangri-La dialogues was interesting because I think Pete Hegseth likened Trump to Lee Kuan Yew, which I would love to have been in the room and watching the Singaporean faces being like, how do you feel about this comparison?
I'm sure the Singaporean faces were appropriately diplomatic and just nodded in a very neutral way.
Prashanth?
It's right around the corner from us where we live, and so I saw I actually had a Grab that accidentally took that route, and I got stopped for a very deep, prolonged inspection of the car and
Why are you
why I was
here?
there, yeah, and why I was traveling through there. So yeah, I experienced it. That's as close as I got to that one. So this week I have a friend visiting from the U.S. actually, and he was actually a GM at Square or Block. Worked very closely with Jack Dorsey, and then of course he spends a lot of his time advising some of the U.S. VC funds. And so a lot of what I'm kind of consuming is just how US VC is now thinking about AI, right? And where are they investing? So actually, if you're a fintech founder or a SaaS founder or built what's called a traditional business now, and it doesn't have a massive hyper scale AI story, there's no more funding left. So everyone's just preserving their dry powder for AI something, right? So I'd love, and that's I think something interesting we can talk about today, because all the traditional capital has now become AI capital when it comes to venture capital. So yeah,
Just a question for Ashant. Is it they are saving their powder for mega rounds for the top, the top AI startups, right? Or is it any AI startup, but it has to be AI?
it's any AI startup, and all AI startups are hyper valued or super highly valued. So it's costing more to participate compared to your traditional businesses. There's a lot more competition. So lots of preemption happening in these deals. So yeah, without disclosing too much, I think yeah, it's a lot of it's a parallel world, right?
Yes.
Yet
Same
here in
story,
Asia, we
different
don't see that
chapter.
frenzy. That's it. Yeah. So here you don't see that frenzy maybe yet. Here we're still talking about core profitability and value creation versus valuation amplification. So yeah, we're living in different worlds for sure.
Yeah. I've been spending some time. Well, I went to a talk by Jason Calacanis this morning. He's in
Yeah,
town for a
I'm
bit,
gonna see him
and
tomorrow. I'll
oh,
plug my
cool.
podcast.
Okay, cool. Yeah, definitely do that. And then, but then also catching up on the Sequoia AI Ascent Summit, and it's just like the thinking there is just totally different. You just don't hear that same messaging from any of the VCs here.
No.
But with that said, we have landed none other than Grant Wright, our guest
Exactly.
for today. The biggest dog in the room. Okay, Grant, I'm going to do a spiel and then you can correct me on this right afterwards. So, you are the group executive for AI at Seek. Seek, as probably most of y'all know, is one of the leading jobs platform in Asia. Y'all are headquartered in Melbourne with operations in almost 10 countries and listed on the ASX. Grant, you are a longtime leader within the company. You joined in 2016, and today he leads up their AI initiatives both externally and internally facing. And so, obviously, our regular pod listeners will know that Peter is also the group commercial officer for Seek, which means that in addition to exploring AI today, we're also hopefully going to get some good gossip from Grant about what it's like actually working with Peter on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
We
Uh,
spend the hour on
yeah.
that.
Exactly. There goes the episode. So I would also say Grant probably runs one of the largest AI teams in all of tech in the entire region. Well, Grant, what's your team size?
About 250.
There you go.
Wow.
And we have been doing it. Grant has been doing it longer than most AI companies have been in existence. So when did
Totally.
we start the AI team?
About a decade ago now.
Yeah, so there you go. So we've been doing it 10 years, have 250 people in Grant's team. So this will make an interesting 45 minutes, I think.
Amazing. All right, let's jump in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Thanks for doing this. Okay, Grant, I kind of, gave the Cliff Notes version of your background. Can you maybe dive a little bit more deeply into, how your first brush with AI, what you've been doing with it at Seek, and then really kind of like the acceleration that you've seen in your role as AI has taken over the world over the last 2 to 3 years.
I'm so glad you asked that because I want to know how Grant got into AI.
Yeah, it's where do I start? So I feel like I have to start with what I studied to give me some legitimacy in the field. So I studied economics and software development, and then I went into management consulting for 10 years, which was a mix of strategy, performance improvement, and M&A. So not AI at all, but a lot of analytics. And I'll come back to why the performance improvement I think is interesting in the new part of my AI role. But then I joined Seek almost 9 years ago now in a strategy role. So I was running group strategy, looking at pricing and M&A for Seek, and then went to international and worked in Asia and Mexico and Brazil. But I was always in and around the product strategy, and I actually did a piece of work on how do we build a global AI capability. So we had AI teams in Brazil, in Asia, and Australia, but they were sort of data scientists sitting in the basement doing interesting stuff, but really struggling to get it out to customers and have impact. So we said, well, we need to have a global capability off common data and add engineering and product capability so we could innovate, thinking about, where's the boundary of innovation? How do you set up the team so that they can be accountable for AI products, build them in a customer-focused way, and then maintain and improve them and innovate with them. So that was the concept, and then they sort of said, well, we need someone to run this thing. So I'm not a data scientist. I've been in and around data science for a long time, but a lot of my work was what's the operating model to get people focused on a problem that matters, and then what's the way to get the organization working to unleash the innovation from these smart data scientists. So that's how I fell into it. We pulled together 25 people across the business, sort of scraped product managers from the strategy team and other businesses and startups we had. We pulled some engineers and data scientists from. That was 25 people. So we've been on a journey to grow that to 250 people.
What year? This is 2016?
That was 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've grown really rapidly through that time. We've now got probably over 70 AI services in production at scale.
Wow. Sorry, 70 externally, like customer facing, or internal ones?
Yeah, customer facing. So most of what we've done to date over that decade is all customer facing. So I used to tell my team, you're not here to sell the product more effectively or at lower cost. You are the product. You're building recommendations and driving the revenue line that way. We've now, with my new role being lucky enough to be Peter's peer now. With that role came not only the joys of working with Peter, but also a new accountability to use AI internally for operational efficiency. So we're pretty early in that journey, but we have a lot on the radar there.
Amazing.
Can I jump in? Like, this is a space that I think in 2017 would have been fledgling, right? Just getting going. And now you're in the hockey stick zone of it. And like in the last couple of years, I think ever since ChatGPT kind of made that first announcement, I think it's just been on a tear, right? So uh, I was like looking at the history of AI as consumers understand it, and I think for most of us it's 2 years, right? That's a very very short period of time. And in those 2 years, the world has changed. People don't search anymore. People are using agents for coding, and people are using agents for travel booking and whatnot. So how do you keep up? Like, is the team you hired in 2017, are they still relevant, right? Or have they, if the rate of change is 50%, no average human is changing at 50%, how do you make sure that this team is relevant, keeping up, and what have you seen there?
Uh, Great question. It's really hard. It's the first thing. Like things are just moving so quickly, and a lot of the value we've driven, we've got to be really careful. It's not commoditizing. So we have a big team working on technology that potentially is being commoditized by large language models. So one of the things we did pretty early, just after ChatGPT came out, was set up a capability to benchmark these models. And so we would plug in, like we plugged in ChatGPT not long after it came out into our search engine and just said,
Yeah.
how does it compare? Let's run an A/B test versus our behavioral driven AI search models, right? How does that compare? And then let's take an off the shelf um, open source model and fine tune it on Seek data and see how much our unique data on our platform can add to that. And how does that compare to our behavioral model? And so we're constantly running those benchmarks. We've got 40 of the latest models being benchmarked right now against our use cases. But we're constantly asking ourselves, what's commoditized? What do we have to stop doing? And where do we push this effort, to get to the new frontier? We've just spun up a Gen AI team, which is pretty rare for us. We tend to focus teams on customer problems, not capabilities. But
Yeah.
because this is moving so fast, we felt like now's the time to focus on it and really get that pace of learning up.
And agentic, how are you thinking about the evolution of agentic within your team?
Yeah, big questions for us on what's it going to do to the value chain. When's it going to get to a point where it can really actually fully automate? So there's obviously a lot of hype in it, and it looks good 70% of the time in the demo, which basically means we've just got to get teams working on it and innovating, but also look for partnerships because, it's a really big question as well. Is it going to be a winning model? What's our role in the ecosystem? Like, what does it do to the aggregation points from a traditional model? And how do we want to play there? And are we likely to be the winner or not? And if we're not, how do we partner with people so that we can still stay relevant? So very early in all this journey, but that's all the stuff we need to think about now.
So can we take a step back? I mean, Seek is fundamentally, at its core, a jobs platform, right? And you match and candidates like talent to the employer. And so what do you think the jobs recruitment and the recruitment world will look like in the AI world? And then like where will it cannibalize your current business, and how are you building, of the 70 process that you've already kind of developed, and as you think about agents, what does the future look like?
For jobs? And
Yeah.
that's a massive question. Look, yeah, I mean, the short answer is
I'm
no.
going to take lots of notes right now.
The short answer is nobody knows.
Exactly.
Certainly in 3 years' time, right? The long answer is jobs are a bundle of tasks, and so there's a bunch of tasks that we know AI and particularly large language models are pretty good at, and so summarizing content, applying learnings from history to common, which is why you see a lot of activity in the legal space. But it's really, so I think studies have said, 85% of people have 10% of their tasks in their role that are able to be automated or certainly augmented by AI. 30% have more than 50%. So the first point is you got to think about this at a task level. And I think it will reorganize the way jobs are done. And so if you think about one example for me is like BAs, business analysts, in a developer team. Like my team doesn't have BAs because we think those tasks are better split between engineering managers and product managers. But a lot of people think in roles and FTEs, and I think we're going to have to start thinking in tasks and capabilities and then how we bundle those. And I think different to other technologies in the past where you tend to get this specialization and unbundling, like the shoemaker goes away, you get the factory, you get the engineer, you get the designer. I think some of this is reconsolidating and you're bringing together, with the help of AI, you can go as a product manager who understands the customer and a bit of vibe coding and some design now, so you can go pretty end to end to at least get a working prototype up. So I think, where we've seen specialization in the past, there's a bit of rebundling, and I think it might be the era of the smart generalist. But yeah, really hard to know. So I think our role, Peter, in Seek is to help people navigate that change, really understand skills and capabilities and how they're moving.
I'll share one. We'll talk about, I think, productivity and how we're trying to think about the AI internally in a little bit. But in the course of thinking about productivity internally, we're talking to a lot of other companies about how they're thinking about it and what they're doing. Every case study I have come across so far, there is a lot of value creation and productivity creation, and B, in almost all the cases and case studies that I've come across, most of the companies are using it to plow back into revenue generating activities as opposed to collapsing the employee base. So I haven't heard of anybody going, I'm creating all this cost savings or productivity increase, and I'm just going to take it all in cost savings by reducing staff. What I have heard is people using attrition, people using massive productivity savings to really get back at the revenue line, more time with the customer, more value add activities, and capturing some bit of savings through a bit of attrition management and what have you, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. In theory, if you are not in a declining business and you're in a growth industry, you would get the biggest bang for the buck by using it at the revenue line.
Yeah.
But for the back office costs that don't add value, so to speak, to the revenue line. And then if you're in a declining industry, it'll go right to cost, one would think.
Yeah, and I think
absolutely right. Sorry,
I think
go ahead.
some of the businesses that maybe are more in the declining industry, they're telling themselves that they're going to reinvest.
Yeah.
When they can't see a return on that, I think you'll see them pulling the cost lever pretty hard.
Yeah, and I think Peter, I think you're absolutely bang on. When businesses are growing, it hides a lot of sins, right? You can basically hide a lot of the inefficiencies and the lack of productivity under the growth. It's only when the tide goes out that's when you start looking at these very, very carefully. But I agree with you. The other point I would like to make is people are still a bit unsure. I think they don't want to have the Klarna experience, or I think there's a couple of other companies that
Actually,
we've
can you
discussed.
deep dive? Can you explain what happened with the Klarna experience? Because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, so I think they like me, right? So I wouldn't say I played my cards any differently. Went all in, right? They went head first, said AI is the way to go, and they kind of went through a massive layoff about a year or so ago now. And then I think they had to eat their words, and they had to bring back a lot of that stuff, right? Because what they saw is customers still, when it comes to financial products, customers still want to talk to someone. The customers were not quite happy with just having an agentic experience. So, and they also noticed that the state of maturity that they had thought the AI had was overhyped slightly, right? So they got the timing wrong, and they kind of went in a little bit more head first than they should have. And I think that's where most companies are today, right? They're like, well, let's see how this plays out. Let's run the parallel track. It's always, no CEO ever gets fired for driving up efficiency. CEOs could face a lot of backlash if they kind of went to kind of protect the bottom line a little too aggressively, and kind of lost all their team, and had to then kind of basically rebuild the whole business. So I think that will come if the tide goes out a little bit and businesses start to flatten or decline. I think shareholders will demand a little bit more of the bottom line protection, and that will come through attrition augmented with some retrenchment. As long as the AI holds its end of the bargain, I think the businesses will be okay. And if the AI does not, then I think you'll see that these businesses are going to be massively impacted. But yeah, I agree. Right now, it's all about output augmentation versus anything else. But
Yeah.
I think the other point that Grant made, I just want to underscore, is look, I think these routine intensive clerical admin jobs, these are the first to go. And I think I was surprised by the statistics you shared, Grant. I would have thought it's a lot more. A lot more of us, kind of white collar workers, are doing kind of high end administrative repetitive tasks than perhaps that statistic speaks to. And I think those are the jobs that AI can do much better. It can do it all night, doesn't take breaks, doesn't get sick, doesn't need weekends. It just does it. So these analyst jobs, these basic entry level legal jobs, the
Sales and
uh,
service. Yep.
yeah, those are the jobs I think go first. Uh, I think, and also these were jobs where people got paid a lot of money to do something very repetitive, very basic. There was not a lot of domain knowledge. There was not a lot of there's not high social jobs. There's not creative jobs. They don't have a lot of strategic content. So you're not really moving the needle. You just you're just process working, knowledge process working. And that job is definitely going to be impacted very significantly first, I think. Would
Yeah.
you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think, and those stats will be moving all the time as the models get better. But I think there are two things dragging on that happening a little bit. And you mentioned both of them, but one is just the models are good 70-80% of the time, but for most tasks they need to be good 95-99% of the time. And I
Yeah.
think people really underestimate how hard that last mile is and how impactful it can be, particularly to a customer. And the other point is just customer acceptance. Are people ready for this? There's a lot of backlash in our world from AI bots recruiting people and doing interviews. Not that they're perhaps not capable, but just that impersonal nature. I think people will overcome that, but they're just not ready. We've seen on our business some of that as well, where we launched new search experiences using Gen AI. They work really well. Customers just don't know what to say to them. So I think those two things will slow adoption, and then obviously then organizations need to change their processes and figure out what roles they do need and what AI can do, and that just takes longer than you think it should, right? Organizations are not very good at process reengineering, and that's what drives the real benefit here.
So
So,
Grant, do you feel like you're building in parallel right now, per what Prashanth mentioned? And then can you share a little bit more about the Gen AI product that you launched and how did it work and what was the feedback and the take up rate?
Yeah, so we've done a couple of things in the Gen AI space. So one of our beliefs is finding a job is a really complex process, and it's very hard to describe what you're looking for. And it's a little bit, well, what have you got? Because you need to know what's out there. But it's also just very hard to describe. And it's obviously much better if you have a 30-minute conversation with a recruiter versus coming to Seek and seeing a search box where you might say accountant in KL. So we said, well, with new Gen AI capability, we can just either have a conversation with someone or give them a big white box and say, just type whatever you want, like tell us your life story. Small example, you show people a big white box on a search page and say, type whatever you want. Most people don't know what to do. They panic and they just give you a blank search. So we got less intent by doing that than more. So it's just little things like that where we're experimenting, saying, okay, the technology's ready, but we've got to guide our users through this experience, right? And Seek's been around a long time. It's got a lot of trust. So people like the familiarity that our experience has.
makes sense. Hey, so when do you think, in looking in your crystal ball, when do you think your digital AI recruiter speaks to my digital avatar
Yes.
and first pre-screens me and pre-screens thousands of us before it actually puts me in front of a real recruiter? When does that happen? Is that coming?
Pre-screening.
I mean, no, but is that coming? Like you think
Oh,
Yeah,
that
like
it's
agent,
definitely
it's
Do you
definitely
think that's the
coming.
it's
future of
definitely
recruiting?
coming.
Okay.
100% coming.
I think it's like versions of that are already here, and it's coming in the next several years. I think what blocks it or makes it successful is trust and motivation. So, in a world where you have your agents out there lying to my agent, who's lying back to your agent, and there's someone else in the mix who isn't even a real person, um, unleashing that today will be chaos. And so, we're
chaos? Yeah,
thinking a lot about identity and verification first so that we can build some of these experiences. And then you got to think about responsible AI and ethics, and is the AI being fair? So there's a lot of, I think, again, last mile hurdles to get over to make this work and be trusted.
yeah,
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's already here. I wouldn't use it today, but
The other thing I think is going to happen as that evolves, but I want to come back to trust a bit more, and I want to,
yeah,
for the listeners, really double down on this thought of trust. But just speaking to jobs, it will happen not in balance. So it won't be the hire side happening at the same time as the candidate side. I really feel is going to sprint ahead because it is a lot easier. Actually, the processes on the candidate side are easier first. And secondly, it's a lot easier for individuals to pick up a startup anywhere globally and
yeah,
deploy it for themselves versus a very large company figuring out how to deploy something across an ERP and all their talent acquisition processes and their website. They got to think through 15 things. They got to talk to the security guys in tech, and then they got to
yeah,
talk to the finance team and show them their business case. And meanwhile, Maria, who's looking for a job, is just going to go, "Oh, this seems like a good startup. I'm just going to try it," right? And so what will happen? And I don't think this is my personal view. I don't think it'll take too long. I think this will be in the next 24 months, is every company website is just going to get swamped with applications for every single job, right?
yeah,
So every single job is going to generate thousands of applications. And then what do you do if your talent acquisition team is 6 people? It's
yeah,
like how do you deal with that?
yeah,
And and that comes back to trust. And in a world where, it's your bot talking to the bot, all that matters is this person, I'll talk on the candidate side,
yeah,
are you real? Do you have the skills that you say you have?
yeah,
Did you graduate from the school that you say? Did the person that you previously work with, would they recommend you?
yeah,
Right? So these are very real things that you need to verify out in the real world.
yeah.
And
And
in Asia, it's even harder.
yeah,
So we're investing a lot in truth, if you
yeah.
want to call
So
that.
we already see this in engineering, right? So the first thing I ask for an engineer when I interview them is not about what they've been doing. I say, okay, let's open your Git. And let's just go through some of the projects that you've contributed in, right? So, and you can't lie about that because couldn't have made it up yesterday, and you can't claim someone else's Git as your own because it's cryptographically signed, right? So I think that's the direction, and even like these, I think what you mentioned, Peter, is bang on, like trust. These recommendations and references, these are all BS today, right? Because I'm like, oh, someone sent me this, I say approve, right? But what I think will start happening is these will be digitally signed. I
Yeah.
think if I'm going to say I'm going to put my name on someone else's recommendation, you don't have to call me for that. I cryptographically, unless we have
yeah.
supercomputers and break all that stuff. I signed it. I said it's me. I put my name on it, and I think that's going to be really powerful because then, yes, I fully agree. My agents are going to go out there and look for a job that's fitting for me. They're also going to go out there and refinance my mortgage. They're also going to go out there and pay off my credit cards and all that shit's going to happen. But I think uh, it'll come back to trust and identity, and that's going to play a super key role. And that's going to force the hand of the recruiter, who's going to have to innovate. And that's where I think the recruiter side or the employer side agents come back. Um, I mean, we can keep pulling on this thread and the whole sweater comes off, but I also think web pages are dead. Like web search is dead, right? Like I think you can keep pulling on this thread, and at some point you say, hey, is it like agents accomplishing tasks versus helping you take an action, right? And I'm saying this more than I did in episode 0 because in episode 0 I was still saying, oh, I'm kind of co-creating software with like a co-pilot, right? Now I don't even have a co-pilot. I just have a set of agents that take a task, break it down, go code it, and they send me a bill, right, of what they've built. So I think that's gonna apply everywhere. I feel like I think that's the word, and that does has profound impact on web search and Google Ads, and we see that a bunch of other things happening. It's gonna be great. What a great
It's
future.
gonna be fun.
So, okay, so Grant, in terms of like where y'all are building, are you seeing more progress and I guess like more enthusiasm for these products on the candidate side or on the recruiter side? Because I mean, as you're talking about the Gen AI product you did launch, the thing I was thinking is like, actually, what I would love to do is like, say I find like a JD that I'm really excited about. I'm like, okay, whatever, seek agent. I would like this role, but maybe tweak these things and or open up and expand these things. You know what I'm saying? And then like they go out and search for me, which I feel like is actually very technically feasible, but I haven't really actually seen it launch yet. Versus on the recruiter side, I would love to get past those like first round recruiter screens where like it's like they know nothing about the role or what, you know, you're like, just get me to the hiring manager. And so where's the take rate higher?
Yeah, so I think we see a massive opportunity on both sides, and I think it's as Peter said, a bit easier to innovate on the candidate side because you're not working through big systems and other processes. So, but we've launched AI ad writing, which is not just kind of GPT launch your ad for you, but actually asking you follow-up questions. And some of the magic is in starting to facilitate this sort of conversation between the candidate and hirer, either async or in real time through chat and ultimately through interview. We're also looking into, through our agentic and multimodal stuff, some of those, like, can we do the screening interview first up? And if you can do that at scale with trust, we're also doing stuff in the reference check, which Peter was talking about before. So if you can take a reference check, make a voice, pull it to the top of the funnel, only have to do it once. If you can then take that into a screening conversation, that's real value add. And we think if you do it right, you can give it less bias, not more bias, and actually give people more opportunity. So there's a heap of opportunity on both sides. The challenge on the hirer side is, can you get it into the systems? And the interesting thing is agents, MCP, all of these opportunities make that, should make that a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. Peter, how does this change your guys' business model? Like,
Yeah.
if you kind of switch it from the recruiter to the recruitee, is that even the right word? I don't know. Like, how does that work? How does
Yeah,
that change your-
so our business model, we make all of our money on the hirer side. So we have a business strategy that is, don't charge the candidate anything, because we want for as least friction as possible to get the maximum candidate throughput, and we want to help people find jobs, and we want to
Yeah.
match them to jobs as fast as possible.
Yeah.
So then you double click on the hire side, and how is our world changing? I think it's going to change a lot in the next couple of years in two or three ways. One is, you know, we even talk about our products today still as ads, and that terminology of an ad goes all the way back to the .com era,
Yeah.
when we were replacing a classified ad. That's where it literally comes, and it did really function more like an online ad, right? But now what we're really doing is delivering a whole bunch of AI-powered services to a hirer to help get a placement. And that lends itself more and more and more, closer and closer to, you pay us when you get success finding the right candidate. And the value of that is so much more than paying for an ad, right? So you know, a hirer might pay a few $100s for an ad, but they might pay $20,000 for a recruiter for an end-to-end service, of which, I don't know, pick a number, 50%, 60%, 70% of that task can be automated, but not the 30. So like, I think our business model will get closer and closer and closer to actually, when a job actually gets placed, we really, really monetize it to the fullest extent. And that's exciting because essentially you've got different parts of the value chain. Companies spend in our region $35 billion finding people. 35 billion. They only spend roughly a little more than one with us. And so there's $34 billion spent on the talent acquisition team with recruiters, crappy software like process design, process management, ERP software. Let me take the ATS, the applicant tracking system module off of an ERP or something like that, right? So it is, and as Maria described it best, it's a horrific experience today, right? So it's not great. And so as a tech platform that's building solutions, one, our job is how do we take the 35 and make it 20, but make it so much better for the candidate, and take
Yeah.
our business model much more aligned to outcomes, and then grow it really, really fast. And that's the kind of strategy behind what we're doing.
And would you say that the future of jobs is like, well, there's always going to be some people who have the usual FTE, right? The full-time employee title, and they cannot keep going. But most of us come in and out of various jobs. We do like 3 months, 6 months in, out. And that again has like a very profound, like again, and
Yeah.
if I have an agent that's like I'm in like let's now I'm in now in Bollywood or Hollywood, I basically have an agent that gets me an assignment. I go do that assignment, and I move to the next one, and next film shoot, the next audition, the next whatever, and then I keep going. Right? It's highly optimized, but that agent is a AI agent, perhaps, right?
Yeah. Well, if you, aside from AI, if you ask our chief economist Blair what is the trend of the labor market over the last 30 years, the single most dominant trend is the change in mix between full time, I'm employed 5 days a week, I work 40 hours a week, and part time slash contract slash whatever. Of
Freelance.
all the factors, of everything that has changed, that is the biggest change. Of course,
Yeah.
if you ask our chief economist, it has been a fundamental reset in most of the developed economies, right?
And that's also very Gen Z friendly, I feel, right? I mean, I feel like they want to do stuff, they want to do a lot of stuff, they want to have like their spare time, and they want to have their free time to kind of grow themselves and whatnot. It seems very Gen Z or Gen
Yeah.
New.
I mean,
Well,
I know, sorry, I know this is the trend, but I feel like it's just not good for actually building great companies, right? Like, am I the only person? It's just like, having somebody who, I mean, we work with freelancers, it's like having someone who hops in and hops out, but doesn't understand the executional difficulties. And like, I also started my career as a consultant, and one reason I left is because, like, it is exhausting. You never actually see the impact of what you're doing, and something that you worked so hard on may never come to fruition because you're not there to execute, and things get twisted as it goes. And so, like, maybe that's where the labor market's going, but I actually don't, like, that's not a good thing. AI agents, great, like, reduce a bunch of this, like, nonsense day-to-day stuff, but yeah.
Yeah,
The
and
more,
maybe it's a
yeah.
generational thing. I do think a lot of people still really care about where they work, the community of that, the purpose. Obviously, remote working, AI agents is changing this, but and maybe it'll go faster in Gen Z and other generations. But I think that will also slow it down a bit because that human factor really does matter, and people care so much about what they do and where they work.
Yeah. And Gen Z is like, the most depressed generation. So I'm not sure that's like, let's just like all follow that one off the cliff. But can we, sorry, can we
Thank you,
bring,
social media. We appreciate that.
yeah,
The
can
gift
we
that
bring the
keeps on giving.
conversation back to trust really quickly? So like, Peter, as you were talking, it was okay. Yeah, startups will be much more agile and be able to kind of adjust to this new world of AI agents. Corporates are having, especially on the recruiter side, are having a tougher time doing their business process restructuring or whatever. So does this mean? So then, what are the advantages to on the corporate side, on the larger company side, and is one of the ones trust, right? Because you have the brand, the reputation, you have the ability to invest in some of these processes to create the trust in your product.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's just use us as an example. So, we're a tech company, but we're an established tech company and not a startup, right? So now juxtapose us against a startup, right? So, and then juxtapose us against, say, a global platform, right? Pick one, Indeed or whatever, right? So, um, where trust matters, firstly, verifying trust down at a local level, verifying it's you, verifying you have the skills, verifying your last employer would recommend. These are very difficult tasks to do that take scale deployments. And you've got to do it in Malaysia, and that's different than New Zealand, and then that's different from the Philippines, et cetera, et cetera. It makes it very hard from a startup from Silicon Valley to think about how to verify trust in Western Australia or Singapore. Where on the global list of priorities for the latest hot AI startup out of Silicon Valley does integrating with the SingPass in Singapore fall? Right? And there's nobody that can do. I mean, somebody's got to get up in the morning and go, oh, I think we need to integrate with this thing. Well, we've already done it, right? So as if trust becomes more and more, you need to be scale enough to really lean in on trust, but you need to be local enough to get to trust in all the localities, because at least in the job market, trust is not generic things only. Some of it is like identity, but some of it, your skills, where you worked last time, how good are you at skill A, B, and C. That's can be quite specific. And certifications, getting a lawyer, passing the bar in New Zealand is a thing. And that is not the same thing as passing the bar in America. And so verifying that you are a lawyer who has passed the bar in New Zealand is hard local work. And,
and the trust product that Seek is building is the candidate profile? Or like what? Where is that trust?
So you want to talk a little bit about SeekPass?
Yeah, so we have a business called SeekPass, which is separate to the profile. It's a separate trusted credential wallet, essentially, where you can verify your identity, your right to work, your work history, a whole range of attributes, largely job related. That sits securely, or the fact that exists and has been verified sits securely in that SeekPass wallet. And then you can share it seamlessly with your Seek profile, use it to apply and stand out with trust.
So, for example, in that profile, which sits separate, and it sits separate, so it is secure for the candidate. So the candidate gets to choose what the candidate shares. But we just launched verification of English language skills. Mm-hmm. And that's the number one skill requested in Indonesia. And number one skill requested in Indonesia is English language skills.
How do you
out of
verify?
All jobs. We work with actually a British standard language tester. We then redirect someone to take a test. They verify, so it's a trusted test provider of English language skills through the British Council. And then they verify that you've passed the test, and pass that verification of the certification back to us. We store that in a secure area. So we don't believe we can verify everything, but take AWS. AWS coding, I'm an expert at AWS. Everybody says they know AWS. Oh, you know what? Go off and take this AWS test and let the AWS test provider tell us what you're ranked, right? So, and you can imagine that times 10 different skills.
Okay. So SeekPass is like maybe the beginnings of a personal recruitment avatar or agent.
Or a passport, if you will.
Or a passport.
A verified passport is more how we think about it.
So I want to actually take a slight deviation from where we are. So I actually think we always talk about AI and everyone ascribes AI to just what's happening in the digital world, right? But I think there's another revolution happening at the same time, which is in the atoms world. So you have the change in bits and the change in atoms at the same time. So AI meets robotics is actually a killer combo in many ways, right? So I actually think, I don't know if you guys have gone deep into this, but more and more I'm seeing, AI meets drones, or AI meets manipulator arms, or AI meets like the whole dark cloud kitchen plus drone delivery. And I think, again, a very large percentage of the world perhaps drives food to people, drives people around, fills a taco, packs a meal. All those are also equally getting impacted. And now you can do it in a real estate space that's away from the main street. You can do it in a dark kitchen, lower needs for air conditioning, heating, cooling, whatnot. And you can do it in a more hygienic way, in a faster way, in a continuous way. Do you guys think about that? I mean, I'm sure Seek doesn't do blue collar worker placement. I'm not sure, but do you see this change coming your way as well?
Yeah, I mean, so we do a fair bit of work in blue collar. We're right across the economy, so we do think about all of it. I think that the drone, like last mile delivery of drones, is an interesting example to what I talk about if I try and do a live example, which is always risky. But so you obviously get a decrease in last mile delivery drivers; those
Yeah,
jobs go
yeah,
away or are drastically reduced. But you get the drone engineers, you get new capabilities there. You also get probably increased ability to stimulate demand that otherwise wasn't there,
right.
because you're lowering costs, you can deliver to regional areas.
Exactly.
So it's just a really interesting example about the complexities of the labour market and how, yeah, that part's going away. We're creating an entire new industry and we're stimulating demand. What's the
Yeah,
net impact on the economy? And that's really hard to play out. But that's sort of how we think about it is, well, what's the
yeah,
second order effect here? It's definitely going to impact some roles or skills. It's going to create new
yeah.
opportunities elsewhere.
We talk about AI, people always just go to the digital world, but I think there's a physical world with robotics that gets impacted.
Well, and I think if you look at where the impact's been recently, obviously B2C digital businesses doing a lot with AI and
Yeah,
recommendations, but like high cost manufacturing or industrials business like the mining industry, right, has
yeah.
been really leading in AI preventative maintenance and automation. So some of that stuff is having a big impact.
Yeah.
Speaking of job creation, though, I mean, Grant, you've got a team of 250. If I'm a young person now and say, oh, I was going to code and now it's looking like a pretty bad idea to do computer science, maybe I should do this AI thing. What are you hiring for these days? Like, what skills do you need, and how has that changed even within your AI team over the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's super interesting how it's changing now and how it might change in the future. Because obviously we've got AI coding tools; they're having an impact, but it's still early, and everyone's figuring out how to take advantage of that. We're finding so data science traditionally like very heavy PhD data science background with, in our case, a practical understanding of the customer and wanting to do things that make a practical difference, not just the shiny research. Um, with Gen AI, I'm increasingly asking myself, do we need a data scientist or do we need an engineer who can do the hardcore infrastructure work to make this stuff work at scale at a cost that's affordable? Because we're also facing this shift from fixed cost training, which now we can get in open source models for LLMs, to this variable cost inference. And so we've got to go back to infrastructure engineering and good old back end, where a lot of people have gone to ClickOps on AWS and in the cloud. So it's actually pushing us back a little bit more to engineering, where everyone's saying the demand might be going away from. Will that last? I'm not sure. But yeah, there's quite a bit of flux now where we're saying you need good prompting, you need good problem solving and customer focus. That hasn't gone away. But sometimes engineers can pull the stuff together rather than a data scientist. And then you need someone who's good at experimentation and evaluating, is this working?
Yeah.
Prashanth, are you saying the same thing?
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old, right? And I always wonder, like, he has 5 years before he goes to college, if he goes to college at all, right? Until last year, that was a given. And
How would you
now,
feel about that, Prashant?
yeah, I'm like, well, if he goes to college at all, and I'm like, well, or can I just take that money and
Fund his first startup.
fund his first startup, or first fund his first 10, right? Like, because you can have many shots at this target now for the same amount of money as a 4-year college, right? And so then I think about, well, what are the skills that this child needs to pick up in the next 5 years? But I think one of the biggest ones is the ability to tinker, like just a curious mindset, just tinker, and which is, I think, what you're also saying, Grant. Like, you want engineers who kind of understand the infrastructure, but you also need engineers who can tinker with the AI, right? And say, oh, I'll ask it this way, and I'll prompt it that way, and I'll package it this way, and get to a POC and a little bit further. And the second is, man, like a lot of the creative side, which over the last, I think, maybe 10, 20 years has been downplayed a little bit. Like, if you were seeking out a liberal arts degree, maybe that was downplayed, and the STEM was upplayed. Now I'm not sure I'd push my son towards STEM. So I think at every level we have this question to contemplate. Like, who do I hire? What do universities put out? What do parents do in terms of preparing their children? Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting 5 years, I think, at least, in society.
All right, I've got two quick questions. Grant, actually, can you talk a little bit in terms of Seek's investment on AI? Because I think what you hear a lot about is like, the cost of, I don't know if y'all are buying your own GPUs, but like the cost of just like getting AI going at like a fairly large company. And so like, where are y'all investing your dollars? Is it on the data center side? Is it on the training side, inference, like whatever? Where are you seeing kind of the biggest spend? And then do you expect that to go up, to go down, the ROI? Like, how do you kind of size up the financial commitment?
Yeah, it's so it's three things really. It's people. I mentioned the 250 people. They're not super cheap. Um,
Shocking.
they're wonderful. They're highly capable.
How many have joined in the last 2 years or since ChatGPT got launched, basically?
Yeah, interesting. So we went through a pretty big wave of growth. We were growing 30% year on year, and then we sort of got to a scale where we felt we could compete globally, and had enough people focused on the right customer problems where the growth didn't stop, but it sort of went from 30% to maybe 10% per annum growth. So that's been in the last couple of years, and now it's kicking up again because there's just way more opportunity than we've got capacity, and we've got infrastructure to look into and other things. So, that's kicking up again, but it flattened out for a while. And the other one is compute and data pipelines. So we've done a lot of the early investment was on a little bit of people and a lot on getting good real-time data pipelines. Because for us to do personalization, we need data signals in less than a second and really low latency search infrastructure. So we built that in-house. We had a vision that we needed to have that capability and own it. Now it's switching much more to compute going from training to inference. Still quite a bit of training with our behavioral models, but much more inference. And that cost is, at the moment, really expensive to do at scale. So if we want to do reasoning models on the front of our search page getting 50 million visits a month, that's many tens of millions of dollars if you just unleash that. So we've got to think about where does it add value and how do we optimize it. Obviously the cost will fall. We've got to pick the right model and the right use case as well. So it's those three things.
Okay. Yeah, I think that maybe just to add, that is one area where if you let the imagination fly, your cost can spin up way faster than you expect and blow out well beyond your capacity. Even a large company like us, you have to think about the economics at the same time as customer outcomes. You just cannot break it apart and say, go solve customer, we'll worry about economics later, because the cost can just really go.
But Peter, someone's got to fund all the hype in the US PE and stock market. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You didn't used to have to worry about that. Like if you were a scale enough, the behavioral stuff wasn't that expensive. You could scale it pretty quickly. Now using generative AI models, you've really got to keep an eye on it.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And then my last question for everybody is actually I want to hear about how y'all are incorporating AI in your day-to-day lives, because I think we talk a lot about, like these big picture questions, but then I'm also like personally, I still schedule a lot of things on my own calendar. Like I send a lot of dumb meeting invites. Like I feel like I'm not quite as advanced as I should be. So I want to hear. Let's share for our listeners.
You mean personal sharing or sharing of like within Seek?
No, personal sharing. I want to hear how AI has changed your personal workflow. Okay, Grant, you're up first.
I'm up first. Okay. I'm a bit like you, Maria. I don't use it as much as I should because I'm experimenting a lot with how we should be using it as an organization. Where I use it the most, I think, is as we've talked about, we've got so many things to think about right now. And I'll come out of a meeting with a team, or I'll have an idea through a conversation with Peter. And in an ideal world, I'd think about that and frame it up for 3 hours and run a session with my team. And I just don't have time to do that 20 times a week, which is what it feels like these ideas are coming at me every week. So I'll do a 20-minute conversation with an LLM, ask it to structure an executive memo and ping it off to my team and say, this isn't perfect, but it's a good starting point for my thoughts. Have a think about it and we'll talk about it in our next one-on-one. And versus doing one thing for 3 hours, well, I can do 20 a week at sort of 70-80%, and it just keeps things moving, which we have to do at the moment. So that's probably the biggest one. Are you
doing voice memo, or are you like typing these out?
A bit of both. Okay. Depends where I am.
All right. Peter?
Yeah, I characterize Grant's use case a little bit different for me. Anything that requires a very big 0 to 1 jump, like like I'm starting at zero knowledge, zero understanding, and it could be researching a topic like oh, what is this thing all about? What is, what are LLM costs and how do you manage them? Yeah, I have no idea. Even the question asked, so I'll get the 0 to 1 stuff. It's so much more effective than a Google search. It's so
Mm-hmm.
much more time saving. Or if I have to draft anything from, okay, I have to frame a question on a strategic partnership we're looking at. Okay, what are 5 things we should be looking at? And it will capture the 5 things I would have captured, but would have taken me 30 minutes to capture it. Um, uh, and even things like performance reviews, I've now trained internally. We have, thanks to Grant, we have internal systems. So in my own voice, in my own way of giving performance reviews, I've uploaded all my performance reviews over the last 5 years, and now I can draft a performance review way quicker. It's richer, and I can focus on the value add stuff. And a lot of times they need to seekers will get more benefit by a richer performance review discussion because I've spent my 1 hour really thinking about the last mile of the stuff that will really help them.
All right, Prashanth.
Yeah, so look, I'll start with a handicap, right? So I never formally learned to type like many of you guys. So I always think way faster than I can type,
Were you
and even
like two fingers, man?
no, no, I've got about 8 fingers on the keyboard, I think, but I'm really bad at typing, right? So my rate of thinking is is much faster than my rate of typing, so that always used to hold me back. And so now I think, given how advanced the voice AI stuff has gotten, my rate of creation of content, even if it's non-coherent, I think this is similar to what Grant was saying. Um, I can create a lot more content, and I can have like a AI, like a simple GPT, just put it together in a more structured fashion, right? Bucket it, and I tend to jump around with my thoughts, and as I'm doing right now, and then it just structures it in a beautiful way and says, here are the 4 headlines that you want to talk about, and this is what you mean, right? So that's a huge win, and I do it all the time, all the time. So, and the good news is if you use like ChatGPT, it has this memory that it builds, and
Mm-hmm.
over time
Yeah.
it knows your style. And I can even say, hey, compose this email in my style and make it coherent and clear, right? So I just say that, and it knows my style, right? So it writes it in my style, and so now, and then I know that if it, and I always say, hey, use this Times New Roman. This my daughter told me that she's like, Daddy, everyone knows you're using ChatGPT because your emails are coming out in Times New Roman. She's 10. Uh, she's like, you need to. No one uses Times New Roman, right? So now I've even told ChatGPT that all my messages that it composes must come out in Arial font. So that's a huge win,
Comic
right?
Sans.
Yeah.
What about Helvetica? Come on.
Helvetica,
Don't
yeah.
forget about
That's it.
Helvetica.
To
So
scan
lovely.
it, like, so I've even saved that, right? That because I was in the middle, I was cutting, pasting, and then I was converting the font and like futzing around with that.
Yeah,
Now I don't
yeah.
even do that. It just comes out perfect. Perfect. The second is I don't do any web search anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done. No web search anymore. I do very little web search, right? Like most of it is like a query in a GPT, and I now ask it for sources. So if I really want to double check the validity, and I always say no hallucination, please, and so it doesn't enable hallucination.
It's like,
And
thanks for reminding me. I will not
yeah, I
hallucinate.
will not hallucinate. I use deep research a lot.
Mm.
I feel I am a curious mind, and I don't have the time for someone to go and do all the research for me to bring something together and then read it. I do it myself. I do it myself. I use deep research a lot in terms of like understanding competitive forces, right from product feature conception to competitive analysis to creating the wireframes and kind of the basic design to even, I think Grant is mentioning this, even generating the first kind of product code and
Mm.
deploying it. I do it all now, right? So I've gone from CEO to PM to junior developer, all of it in one shot in one day, and so I'm hyper productive, and so effectively it's a signal to my team that everyone needs to do this, right? You go do your deep research, pull the insight, understand it, challenge it, ask it to ask you 10 questions of why something would work or wouldn't work, answer those, get clarity, then prompt. So I'm doing all that. So it's like amazing. Um, and lastly, I get thrown a lot of legal documents, wills,
Oh yeah,
trusts, insurance, all that stuff.
yeah.
And I try to redact all the stuff that I don't want it to know. And then I do have a local version of a GPT that I use to summarize, extract, and then kind of engage with it. So I don't push it onto the internet, but I don't trust the world that much, but I do use it. But that's so much better than having a expensive lawyer explaining
Yeah.
what I'm signing to me, right? Like,
Yeah.
and most of these documents are 200 pages. Like, I'm not going to read 200 pages, nor do I have the time. But I need to know what I'm signing, and I ask it all the curveball questions, like, what is my exit clause, or what would be the worst case scenario if I blah 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 this happens, and it's pretty good. You can answer it. So yeah, I think my world's definitely different, and I think in the next 6 months, a year, it'll continue to change exponentially. Just a
Yeah.
mindset, and I think we've been discussing this since episode 0. Like, if you adopt it, if you jump in,
I'm
different
setting
world.
aside a weekend in this month to try and code my first agent. So for TIA conference, is this super easy? Wait until I'm WhatsApping you questions all weekend. But for TIA conference, we're onboarding like 100 to 150 speakers. And so each speaker needs their calendar invite. They need like personalized content, like it's just stuff. And
Yeah.
then our team's been pretty good. Like they use mail merge, but still it's not perfect. I'm like, I need a proper agent to like be able to interface with, because it is routine. The information's somewhere in some spreadsheet. I just need to get it to the right person. So wish me luck.
But by the way, this is a double-edged sword, huh? Like, so sometimes you go down this rabbit hole, this AI rabbit hole, and then after a while, you're just banging your head against the AI, because the AI it's really
There are
smart, but it's
limitations.
really stupid at the same
Yeah,
time, right?
right.
It's hacking stuff that you don't want it to hack, and you're like just banging your head against, like, man, come on, just don't do that. That's stupid. Do this. But of course, it's a machine. It doesn't really fully understand. So,
And the same
but
happened
yeah,
with
it's good
humans
to a certain
sometimes.
extent. That's why I think it's 70%. It's not quite where you want it to be yet.
All right. We're going to wrap on Peter's poem.
Oh, here we go. I think
All
I
right.
think most
This is
people.
what Grant's been waiting. He's
I've
like,
been
I had to
waiting for
sit through an
this.
hour of
Yeah,
this
yeah,
nonsense for
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. So two things. A lot of feedback. Shakespearean's probably not the right thing. It's not most fun. Maria's definitely agreeing with that. So I will bypass the
It just
Shakespeare.
sounded difficult to deliver, like
Yeah,
the
it was
words
so
were hard
fun.
to.
I got to be the actor I always wanted to be.
Will it be in Middle
So
English?
I'll go back to Limerick, and I wrote this for Grant,
Oh, please.
and it's about job agents searching bots talking to bots. So here we go. A job seeking bot with great flair applied to each role with a prayer. It tailored each pitch with nary a glitch, while humans just blinked in despair. The hirer's AI, just as keen, scanned resumes sight unseen. Two robots collide with logic as guide, and no one knows who runs the scene. There we go.
Good.
Crushed it.
Well
I feel like
played.
that should be on your LinkedIn profile. It's so fitting.
Poet. There we go.
Grant, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a good session. Lots to learn and unpack. Listeners at home, as always, you can give us your feedback or nominate topics at 6040podcast@techasia.com. And we will catch everybody in 2 weeks' time.